harder for you to get on the screen.
So great. Well, I think it's off. Like you're saying, so the format. First of all, welcome. Thank you for coming all the way up here to present to us. Being biased on the whole start with the interview. I'm sorry. Introductions from us. So we'll turn it over to you for introduction. We'll roll right into your presentation. One fact is that that is a camera. It is recording. This is not a public meeting, so we're not here, but we have the recording case in live with social media questions or conflict between what's being heard. If no one ever asked for it, I guess it's another call. Having said that, I'll go with right in the field. You were really
And John Dunn, Gloucester CFO.
Hi, so my name is Natalie Assis. I'm a project executive.
Sen left. And I'll be working with Sen as the assistant project manager. Spots working with George as the assistant.
George Canton, Commodore Builders. Jonathan Reed, Chief Estimator, Chief Advisor. Ready to go?
ready to go.
Excellent. So thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here. Probably a long journey, I'm guessing, to get to this point, to get your last pocket things away. Exciting time for you, exciting time for us. So really excited about this in the sense that we are in our 20th year, so really excited about that. But also, so really, we know a lot around the police department. I think the stats are 19% of all police officers are former veterans. So we love the opportunity to participate there here at County Boston. So really looking forward to that. The team here has put together a really intense plan, really dove into the RFP, really paid attention to the temporary facilities on the police department. We weighed multiple options before we got here today. In the end, honestly, we ended up back in the RFP, which we'll go through here today. So a lot of good stuff that we put in here. A really experienced team, half the year from the Dedham Public Safety project we're working on, which interviews a great job with folks in the town of Dedham, as the owner's project manager, town manager, or either chief police and fire. So we get great reviews. The team's doing a fantastic job with the Dorogonia team as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to this team to do, well, we're going to be their introduction of roles, but we'll turn it over to Natalie to talk about what we're talking about here today.
All right, so thank you, Jim. So, so as I mentioned, Natalie Assis, I'm the project executive. I'm also working on the Dedham Public Safety building. And for us, it's a great opportunity to do another building station, and we have done some in the past as well as Commodore.
Good to the introduction. Yeah.
You want us to keep going?
All right.
That's fine. No problem. I mean, since we did the introduction of it. All right. So what I would highlight here is like the main three items that our team is going to cover today. The first one is the police relocation. We understand what it is to work in an occupied building. That it needs to remain secure. How to move the police. We are familiar with the needs. Critical items such as dispatch or the cell area. But also, we understand really what it takes. We looked at it. We went to the site. We really understand and we really feel good about that. So Chloe is going to highlight the enabling and all those important necessities. Aside from that, then our team is going to take you through our approach for this project. So this is really from the bottom up. We are going to identify the phases to limit the impact to the occupied area. And finally, we will talk about the procurement because we really understand the current market. This is really an odd market we are in these days, and the timeline that is required, to get subs on board, all the procurement, the long lead time that are going to be driving the schedule, and this is actually a risk. So Sen and John will take us through that and those key elements.
Thanks, Natalie. So this slide here just kind of sums up some of the aspects we see that are involved in pre-construction. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff on that. Gives you a lot of practice being involved and kind of make sure the pre-construction process goes smoothly and then transitions right to construction. So we want to make sure it's a collaborative effort, make sure it's transparency, and make sure everyone's held accountable. And with that, I think we need to make sure we're giving feedback on a timely basis and providing everything folks need to make decisions that happens. I'm just going to go through, if you look on it, it's in the slide too, you can't read it in the handout, you can't read it, but communication and regulatory, this is our permitting, any type of support you need to advertise the project or to let the community know what's going on with the project. Also logistics, so we're going to be working closely with you to make sure we factor in anything for the police department, but also just for the public as well, for safety, for wayfinding signs, making sure that we get where they need to go during the construction. And all that has to happen during pre-construction, so it's figured out with the subcontractor. Bottom left is document review. So this will be working closely with the design team, going through the drawings, doing a lot of exploratory work, making sure we can open up walls and look what's behind the walls, so that if we see something that we wouldn't expect, find it early, make sure it's in the bid package, make sure the subcontractors know it, so that there's not a delay and a cost component to it later. There's also things that we like to do with scope jurisdictions, look at if it's more efficient to do a certain way and make sure that the specs and drawings are kind of figured out that way, so it's all factored in. The other thing during this period too, actually it's more the communications, the pre-qualification. Natalie mentioned about the market. The market right now is very, I would call it dynamic, I guess, because stuff's manpower, material availability, everything's very, very tough right now. It's changing daily. So we're tracking that. I'm going to make sure we're giving you guys feedback constantly on it. So it might influence design on specifying certain material, or it may just be how we pre-qualify some of the subcontractors. Make sure the subcontractors have the financial wherewithal to do the job, make sure they have the work done, renovated, occupied buildings as well. The budget, that's obviously a huge component of pre-construction. I think our biggest asset to you guys would be to make sure we're providing as many options as possible. Pricing out whatever options, we're not just looking at it for price, looking at it for constructability, looking for it for schedule, for life cycle costs and all those, to make sure that you get at the end of the day those buildings. And then obviously schedule, and Sen's going to touch base a little bit more about this, but the schedule will tie kind of back into that procurement, making sure we're procuring the material in the subcontract on a timely basis. Sen will touch base on that.
Jonathan. So our schedule approach has three major phases: enabling, phase 1, and phase 2. In the enabling phase, we'll install the temporary work that you need. The plan currently is to move the police department up to the second. We expect the enabling work to take about a month. Then we will start phase 1, and our plan is to start construction in the basement and first floor in phase 1, which has a lot of infrastructure there. We expect that to take approximately 9 months. Once the first floor and the basement are completed, we will then move the police department back down to the newly renovated space. Then we will move up to the second floor and complete phase 2, which we expect to be completed in about 6 months. The project being completed around December 2023, in total 18 months. As Natalie and Jonathan outlined, we see material procurement as one of the major risks of the project. There are many long lead time items, such as mechanical equipment, electrical gear, curtain wall, and the generator. So completing this project in 18 months really requires that we successfully manage the material procurement. So we'll also utilize a lot of experience on the team on specialized police department equipment such as cell doors. I also bring some recent market insight and lessons learned from having just completed a renovation project at Wheaton College, where we renovated a 3-story science building and filing center into new classrooms, offices, and a new nursing suite. And that project was very similar to this project in that it included a lot of new MEP infrastructure, replacement of windows and curtain wall, and significant abatement work in a partially occupied building. So on that Wheaton project, the material delays that affected us most were the generator, electrical panels, lighting controls, and wood doors. Those are the items that really affected the critical path. And so through collaboration with the team there and also doing some workarounds, we were able to complete the project on time in January this year, allowing them to start classes there in the spring. So we understand that the current supply chain is very dynamic, like Jonathan noted. And I've just lived through it at Wheaton. And so, we're sort of staying with the pulse of the market. We will strategize with the team to sort of maximize our options. For example, we know that electrical panels used to take, 6 to 8 weeks. Now, some custom panels can take up to 8 months. And if you have a panel that has like 2 custom components that they don't have, it'll hold up the whole order. So, instead we could release the panels with most of the breakers so that it gets in line for fabrication. And then we can purchase, additional breakers and components separately as the design evolves. For light fixtures, we're finding that a lot of light fixtures, the custom fixtures with, integral controls and sensors, those have much longer lead times. So, what we could do is make sure that the sensors and lighting control are purchased separate from the light fixtures themselves. So for example, if we have the light fixtures, but the lighting controls are delayed, we can install the light fixtures and we can just slice it through and keep it on all the time. And then that would at least allow us to get, to pass our life safety inspection. With the generator, learned that, different size generators may have significantly different lead times because they're built in different factories. So, a 150 kW generator or a 125 kW generator or 250 kW generator, those could have significantly different lead times. And so that's the kind of information we're going to seek out early on and share with the team so that you can make an informed decision. So our team here, we're going to dig deep into the supply chain risks. If necessary, we can pre-purchase some long lead equipment items and pass that on to our subcontractors after they're ordered. During pre-construction, we'll also work with you to refine the enabling, phasing, and logistics plan, which Chloe and George will go into right now.
Thank you, Sen. So some of you may know my dad, Jim Doucette, who is lieutenant of the Manchester Fire Department. So I've grown up in Manchester for 23 years now. So I'm not new to the area, but I definitely know a lot about the city of Gloucester and surrounding towns. So our plan, like Sen mentioned, was to temporarily move the police department up onto the 2nd floor. And in order to do so, we'll need to coordinate with the police department and other members of the team to ensure everything moves smoothly. One area we would like to discuss is the relocation of the dispatch area. So critical items that we highlighted that we need to address in order for everything to run correctly is the backup emergency generator, emergency power, and the E911 systems. So we are also planning to fit out the 2nd floor with all the necessities of a police department. And some of those necessities we highlighted were the interrogation rooms, roll call areas, and locker changing rooms. And we are unaware of whether or not the department is utilizing the cells during our time, but if so, then we'll need to come up with a safe and secure plan for those areas that George will discuss in more detail.
So once again, good afternoon, guys. My name again is George Canton. I'm scheduled to be a superintendent for this project and thrilled to have the opportunity to work with you guys. I'd like to take a minute to just talk about where I've been and why I understand how this project is going to be important to you guys, especially as a police department. So in the background there, you see the fire department. Very proud of that project. It was a headquarters building, had emergency 911 radio systems, backup 911 dispatch, the whole deal, read the entire town municipal fire alarm systems. Over the course of that project, we had an existing headquarters building we had to go into, and we actually had to maintain all those systems the entire time flawlessly. I mean, I understand you guys obviously know how important it is to keep all that we're running your communications. But we went in there, we identified, worked with the municipality, the department, and said, what do you guys need? How do we identify these systems? How do we protect these systems? How do these systems work? And from those conversations and those pre-construction meetings, they were going there, identify everything, protect it. And as we built the entire fire station next to it and renovated the entire headquarters building, brought new systems online, we were able to learn through the that entire process, basically how to do that without impacting day-to-day operations. And we also had a fire department that we had to build an entire station for them on our occupied site. So it was a very complex project. And, working with that right now, I'm just getting more information on how the police department works. It really is a joy to be able to work with departments. There is a point of us being able to get back as well to that. So I'd like to go through and I'd like to take a moment. I'd like to look at what that first phase is going to look like, because to us, we recognize that as probably the most critical phase of the project. In order for us to set this project up so that we're going to be successful, it's going to be about making sure that the department can stay successful. Because we can build a building, a lot of people can renovate a building, but it's going to be about how we can work with you guys in order to make sure that that building and your time in that building is able to coexist, right? So right now we're looking at this as an 18-month project, but what we're actually trying to say to you is that we want to move your department for 9 months. So for that 9 months, the 3 months prior to that, we go upstairs, we fit out, decide what critical infrastructure needs to get in place, see what we can actually manage that 3-month time frame, try to fit out office space, for yourselves, for your people, so that you can function as a department for that time. And we can get in there and understand where those systems are that we're going to have to tie into. We have roof dunnage, we have HVAC lines, we have all these things that transverse between the first floor and the roof. And at some points, that's going to mean that we're going to have to get in there off hours. And I understand the police department never shuts down, but there's slower times than others. And we'll work with you guys to figure out when that is. And we'll make all those ties happen throughout the course of the project. So, let's just slow my brain down 1 second. But I mean, really, that pre-construction phase is when we'll sit down with you guys and we'll really say, what can we do? Do we open up the courthouse and create that into a flex space for you? Is that going to be your hall area in the morning? Is that going to be your lunch area? Is that where you're going to end up putting some partitions? And that's what's going to happen with Jonathan, his team, me in the background, and that's how we're going to go into those first 3 months. So once we get you guys set up and you guys are comfortable, then we can start talking about construction. And so that's why we started here. So now that one move on to the next phase. So now we're outside the building, and now we have another challenge, because now we have to talk about not only you guys getting into the building, which it seems like from what we can tell, all your parking is in the lower part of the parking lot area here. And there's going to be a need to take up some of that for construction space. This is all stuff we can talk about. What's going to work? What isn't going to work? We understand that your access point right now is that staircase where we're just talking about having a construction fence. How does that work? Are you guys going to be okay with going around the block to come up and into the building? And then we also have to make sure that during both phases of construction that we maintain public access. Because the last thing we want to do is if somebody needs to get you guys and they're walking down the street and they need help, they know that there's a police station there. They need to get to the police station, ring the doorbell, get help if needed. So all of those things, that's all going to be part of recon. Right now, this is our first pass of this, right? Well, I shouldn't say first pass, but I'm up all the way here, but this is the pass for today. So one of the things I'd also like to take a point about and talk about here is just one of the things, it's just maintaining electrical power to the building. Once again, it goes back to critical systems. So emergency generator in a building like this isn't really optional, it's a requirement. So in order to maintain that emergency generator or a new generator that is more suited for your new power needs, we're going to have to relocate that existing generator. In order to relocate that existing generator, we might have to bring in a trailer generator. We might end up just moving this one trailer generator there in case something were to happen during that power move. But a couple of good things about this is we have transformers in 2 different spots, which means that our duct banks aren't going to be coming into the same spots. We'll be able to bring in new power and start figuring out how we're going to kind of switch over. Do you want to bring us into the basement? So when we get into the basement, it's another challenge. At the bottom of the screen, there's that blue room down there, and that's our electrical. So, I mean, we're not building. So part of the challenge of building in an existing building is your infrastructure ends up pretty much in the same spot. So we have to now get in there and put electrical equipment inside that room. So while we have an advantage to having a duct bank coming in a separate place, we have to figure out a way to make sure, depending on how big our electrical equipment is going to be, automatic transfer switches, things of those nature to keep the power on. We got to figure out how we're going to coordinate all that. Now, everything may be able to fit. We might be having enough to get new gear in, and not. Or something we might need to look at is possibly fitting out a space adjacent to the electrical room until we can get that new electrical here up and running. But meanwhile, what we are doing is coordinating and communicating when the power needs to switch over so that the power doesn't go out, but you know that we're at a critical point. And that if something were to ever go wrong, at least you're prepared and it's not gone. This is our plan. We have generators in place. Power's going to switch over. But, in the case of, there's a storm coming, well, we might end up on generator power today. It's the same idea, right? So those are the conversations that we need to constantly be having with your departments. You're ready to handle that, just like you're watching for that weather coming. So the other part about the basement that's critical, it's just, we also know that there are cells down there. We're not really sure what your needs are. If you're going to need cells, if you are going to need cells,
We plan on relocating.
okay,
So, leave for some period of time.
okay,
But that's the plan.
okay. That's definitely much easier. Logistics wise, it's just tough to get in the back. If for some reason you say you absolutely need it, we'll find a way to split them half and half, go through the storage closet on the side, come in the other way so we can maintain access. The toughest part will just be getting from the front door back to there and keeping that as an access point for your department. Because the next part, as we go upstairs, I want to talk a little bit more about the building access points. Okay, so when you guys are upstairs on the 3rd floor, we're going to maintain that interior stair tower. If you follow the blue line, you have the outside storefront area, which is that curb space, glass space on the outside that's going to have to be rebuilt at some point. Well, when you guys go up to the 3rd floor, you'll still have that for egress, right? But then but your main point of egress would be that interior staircase. And we're going to have to, when we bring you guys back down, we're going to have to take over that exterior staircase there so that we can redo those railings. We can redo that glass. You guys are going to be ground floor and you're going to be basement. So we're not going to be taking away from your egress. When you guys are up on 3, we'll have a stair tower. We're considering putting a stair tower on the outside of the building so we can access roof without even going to the police department. Then when we get you guys come back down, that can be our main access up while we are working inside that staircase. So we're looking at alternate methods of, how we get around the building. And the point of this is that I want to bring to you guys is that we recognize that your department has to be in one spot. We have to be in the other spot. We're neighbors. We're not cohabitating one space. We're neighbors in the same building. You guys are here, we're here. There are times we're going to have to communicate. We're going to have to figure out how to get the steel dunnage in, how to get refrigeration line down to the roof, how to make sure that volume damper is set, whatever we're doing a ductwork down and through. But at that point, we'll be having those conversations. So, and then finally, I really just, that was my big point. It's just our communication level being egress through. And then what's very important, it's you guys have that one. Come back upstairs for the last 6 months, build up the building, build out that whole courthouse upstairs, and then we go through a stage occupancy, go through testing and balancing, partially for the first time through, and get our affidavits, and we go through the second part of it, and we bring it all up to speed again with full testing and balancing for our HVAC systems. We do sprinkler partial, and sprinkler full, we do fire alarm partial testing, fire alarm full testing, and that'll be a conversation that be day one with the building department, making sure that the building inspector is up to speed with what we're looking to do and how we're looking to do it, making sure Dawn Whittier and their consultants and engineers are understanding how those affidavits are going to have to come through and make sure that all those things are firing on day one. That's all I have to update.
Thank you, George.
Yeah.
So I think you heard it. Our team really broke it down into 3 main phases. The first one being really the enabling and mobilization that could have minimum impact on the police. To try to really limit, the police relocation duration, the minimum, around 9 months at this point. And at that point, when this is completed and you move back down, you would have, around 6 months remaining for the courtroom and support areas, including all the storefront and the stairwell. So I think we really believe that this 18-month schedule is very doable. It requires like a successful pre-construction phase, and we feel like there is like all the good tools and the team to get there. And we really hope that, our team covered all the concern, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Just ask that at the end of this presentation, we can have a few minutes, for Jim to just close out. But Is there anything we may have?
So we'll start, and we have any questions for Scott?
We can do it. I don't know.
So the presentation of the people, let's skip that one. Get a description for each person. Thank you.
You have some questions, so we'll start from the right side. Neil.
First thing, just expand a little bit more on your experience in public safety projects and a little bit about what or how you differentiate.
So I can start on that, considering I'm currently working on the public safety building, which is a combined building with police and fire station. So we definitely have some experience, of those, this project, but also the fire department, the police department as well. So this is, in general, and then in terms of, our place in the public market, I would refer to Jim, our public leader. That would be better suited to explain a little bit.
Yes, I think that covers all of our public safety components here, all of it mostly recent, all of it the longest one, I think 5 years ago. Play in the public arena, that's all we do, that's all this group does. A little bit more about how we think about it, but we do all mostly same at risk work, public market here in this group. We occasionally do that with the general hiring process. Very strategically, but this group very much knows the secret public process.
Just to follow up, 3 projects you mentioned. Yes. And then just as a follow-up regarding the differentiating your services, how does that find out?
Yeah, I think Jim's going to talk about it too. I don't want to take too much of it, but I think so. Jim runs the public group, which is a component of the larger company, $500 million company, but we have all that added resources like that.
No, that's fine. To answer your question directly, we think what differentiates ourselves is there's 2 things I would say to that. It's that pre-construction process, right? So people say they do pre-construction, and some of that pre-construction might look like updating budgets. That's not pre-construction. Pre-construction is the fact that I'm digging in, partnering, really figuring out what needs to be done, making sure it's incorporated into the drawings, make sure we work with our partners, and delivering on the promise. So, from a pre-con standpoint, I feel like we differentiate ourselves, but then also our in-house resources. So, right, as a mid-sized company, halfway company, although we're one component of 6 sectors, we have access to multiple components of the company and our in-house resources. Which if you bear with me to the closing, I've got it all up here, but I can go to the ball and explain it. We've got a lot of in-house resources that I want to talk to you that we have at our fingertips. This group has their fingertips and really plays a part in making sure that we journal.
And I would add one more thing. So as an example, say for the data public safety project, when we awarded the project, we knew it would work and this pre-construction effort. Then from discussing with the police and fire department, we realized that, the access to the backside of the firehouse that was adjacent was critical, but in some ways, we really needed this area where they were currently accessing to the electrical service, all those new things like you have here. So we were actually able to create a plan. We actually do some drone aerials, like study the grade. It was fairly intricate, and we're able to actually find a solution that was very satisfactory. So the chiefs were very happy. So we can keep it live, and then we could actually build the project easier and safer and cheaper. So this is kind of like what we mean by pre-con. We actually do like deep analysis in that pre-con phase to see what works and what is better for the team.
Just add one thing. I've worked actually 13 years on CM at risk projects. So 7 of those years were on the client side. I worked in that as well. And I've actually worked with contractors on the other end. And depending on the contract, you may have someone who just says, not on the bid documents, and that's it. And it's very rigid. And having both worked for CM and worked on the client side, I just can speak for myself that Commodore is extremely client-oriented. It doesn't really matter whether it's a public project or it's a private project. I mean, the culture of the company is, we want to, produce for our clients. We want them to be happy every day, and we want them to be a premier client. So I think in that way, we're different from some of the other CMs I have actually personally worked for, and some of the CMs I've worked with when I was on the client.
So you guys have done a good job of kind of breaking down the goals. And I know that you guys probably close it, but kind of complete the team for us. Who goes here at the beginning of this project?
That's the first slide. For you. There you go, Jim.
Yes, these are just some of our resources that we have. These will be actual individuals, actual faces, like you can see upper left hand side. Mike Clark runs our pre-construction department, so he heads up any of the scheduling and planners that we have. So we've got in-house professional schedulers and planners that will work with the project team from beginning to end. They don't drop off at any point. So he'll manage multiple folks along here. So Rob Panucci is the upper right hand side, the planner for this project. Upper left in the blue box there is Mark Rapini. He runs our immigration services department. So they'll have multiple people, including Mara, who's just below her, who's our BDC manager in the job. So between Mark, Mara, and others that actually probably facing that aren't on here, that will work with us with the MEP department. So that MEP department has the ability to do, and I'm kind of doing my closing here, so I apologize, but some of those things that we do, we have the ability to do in-house 3D modeling, 3D scanning to tie into the model, be able to create, BIM drawings, really tie up to there. But then the scheduling and planning piece of that, well, so they'll also tie into commissioning. So these folks will deal with coordination in the front end, and they'll carry it to the entire project to the end, right to commissioning proposal. So they'll stay with the entire project. And the scheduling and planners, they've got capabilities that we're really proud of. A lot of them. We've got 40 scheduling capability. We tie up to our schedule, really works well. Right, end of the month, expect to get everything out the door, and get the racks out the door. So there's a lot of folks here. Mike Price, the bottom left, our QA/QC manager. So he's on every single one of our projects. He's the manager that helps set up the team. He's the one going through the specs with the team to identify all of the key critical items that we want to make sure we're checking the box on. So it's above and beyond what we're going to do every day, just in general. Here are the key items that might be, 200 items that we say above and beyond our day-to-day. These are the items we make sure that we're checking. Okay. So they'll work with the team. And I'll get a little bit more into some of the resources, some of the other resources that don't have a particular basis. Michael said. Give you everything.
No, I would say, a lot of people, I would add to what, Jim was saying, a lot of people, like, we do use Procore, but we use it kind of like, really like, at a very high level, our IT person is actually even talking at Procore conferences, so we use that also internally, like, for, anything from the modeling to, like, we use, like, a software like OpenSpace, it's not a person, but this is like a 360 camera where we move through the space every week, and we can see tracking. During COVID, that's a project including that, and we could actually like look at it. If people want to see a detail, you don't have to necessarily go to the site. Then we can do problem resolution. We can compare that against a model. So when we're checking, let's say, penetrations, it helps us on creativity. So it's not just people; it's also like the tools. Just to add what Jim was saying is that sometimes it's how to do it better and smarter, and sometimes use a little less resources.
I think one more person just mentioned is Kelly Thompson, the project administrator, and that's a really important one. Deal with all of the cost side of things. I think work on this issue, and also if there's any MBW, she's actually.
That's excellent. She's dedicated to the public. That's all she does. She knows what that requirement is. They get every month. Working close with Senator team.
Talk about the project.
Sure. So I'll pick that one because I'm actually very passionate about the project. So I became lead certified in 2005 when people didn't know what lead was, and I'm also like, I guess people laugh at me all the time for how many letters after my name, from certified energy manager to well AP, it's just part of lead, and also like FIRES for passive house. So this is like a topic that I'm very interested in. So I think this is something we truly believe. So as a perfect example, one of the last few projects I worked on was the DCR, new maintenance facility in Cambridge. It was a state lead silver, and we actually did achieve the goal by helping the design team, finding innovation credits, or even like from talking to some suppliers, it was wash bay, and actually identifying solutions to actually generate more credits. We have a lot of other projects that have been certified. We are working now in that, but I mean, there are many, many projects. Said it was on a few, Georgia as well. So this is something that not only like we believe, but that's something that we promote. We have very much a sustainability culture, from our office, doing like triage on different things. So this is something we strongly about. I don't know if that's a good question.
We have in-house sustainability managers that work with the process to make sure that we're meeting the requirements of the project.
Great, so you've had a chance to view the conceptual plan. For the project, who do you see as relative strengths, weaknesses, and challenges, opportunities here? And you really touched upon it in your presentation. The other part of this question is that I was looking to, it seems like the challenges and opportunities lie in the reconstruction phase. The idea about schooling is a big challenge for us, a big challenge. Me personally, so I imagine that's a big part of it. What would you see?
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. I mean, the challenge is keeping, like I said, an unoccupied building is, I don't want to use the word easy, but it has a lot less challenges, right? But then you talk about, you go to an office space, you move an office team. And well, that has a certain set of challenges, but then you talk about moving a department that can never shut down. I think it really is, moving the dispatch, making sure you have your critical systems, making sure that don't get interrupted. And making sure that I think that the public doesn't see anything change, because to them, like I said, that building has to stay open. But I also think that we also have an opportunity here to make that be a really good process and make sure that that really does happen seamlessly. We can get in there and really understand what you need and make sure that you're comfortable for 9 months. We're going to be next door. We might make a little bit of noise sometimes, but we'll figure it out. And I think the opportunity to really work with you guys and understand what your needs are, I think that's really
Making sure all like the expectations are set during pre-construction, a big huge thing, because it's not just us, it's then us conveying it with the design team to the subs who are they going to be bidding it, pricing it.
And that one thing we know is for George to speak a little more about, our goal is really to eliminate all the surprises, but also like communicate with you so you decide what you want. Because one of the challenges we haven't talked as much is all the remediation. We are very aware of all this. That's why we had asked for the abatement report. So we understand what it takes to work in a building that needs that kind of work. That's something that Sen just did in Wheaton, and maybe George, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about our process.
And the sensitivity of it. I mean, a lot of people just the anxiety when people see containment and abatement sign. So making sure it's
yeah. Right contractors are at the table having conversations with us and hiring the right people.
Yeah, I think this whole schedule we built it, right, really was driven really by procurement, right? If you really took a look, it's a high level concept schedule at this point, but the reason we had the duration, mostly that first phase is because the infrastructure that's going to go into not a lot of work, based on a lot of it's, right? It's the salary work for the most part, right? It's not an area that's really going to be heavily occupied. So I think there's opportunities down there to potentially maybe get that cell area done, give you access to the garage if you need to get back quicker, so you're not depending on trying to spot, say, for example, our bookings. So really, that procurement is what drove everything. That's what we split it out. So we went through here, we want to get in for, wanted to get, but this has potentially got the opportunity to maybe have a later start, let some of the procurement catch up if need be. We just got to want to meet the outline, the RFP, we want to be safe, I guess you could say. But I think there's opportunity here, depending on working with our media team, being able to specify certain material, whether it's the curtain wall, right? That obviously could be difficult. Obviously, the new services coming into the building would be difficult, and we know we've got to time this in a way that really works with what's happening here in town, right? We know what happened. It's busy, right? And everybody's up here, so we know you're going to get high season and low season. We got to make sure we get that timing correctly. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think everything here is made up in pre-con. I think truly that's what drives this whole process, that will move our schedule, that's what will move our thought process. So I think there's tons of opportunity here to potentially look to better things, whether it's material procurement, whether it's schedule, whether it's just how quickly we turn on certain areas.
Maybe touch upon the approach to the project, but just kind of summarize what steps you're going to take to ensure a efficient time to finish the project.
So, you know, especially at the front end, you know, before we even get you guys in the third floor, right? Finding out what's going on above the sky, make sure we don't have cameras on, just understanding the details of the building, what's existing. Because when you walk into an existing building, I mean, I'm very confident everybody's done a great job on that plans, but there's things that they don't know are behind walls, you know, and just, we find it, we get in there. So anything we can do to find any clues along the way, and, you know, whether it's, you know, getting in there, doing scanning, and maybe pulling down ceiling tiles on the third floor, and scanning above the ceilings there and getting that, you know, real existing conditions built into the model, comparing it against what's there, and understanding differences. I think that's the
So once we've actually done, you know, have the opportunity to go in there and come up with a more, you know, realistic plan, and once you see there, it's really important to take that into the bid document. Because you want to strategically buy out the trade so that you minimize the change orders. You know, so if you know in advance that potentially, you know, it would make more sense to demo and invade something rather than do it in one piecemeal. And, you know, we've done that at Wheaton where, you know, there's much less go on the drawings, and at the end of the day, you end up having to do more anyway. So if you think ahead and strategically think, well, we're going to put a whole bunch of outlets, and, you know, might as well demo the drywall, and, you know, so things like that. Like write it in the scopes. We do a very thorough job with preparing documents to put in the bid with the full schedule, the full phasing plan, and very detailed scopes, so that when for trade and non-trade, so that it's very clear what they own and stuff. The more that you can capture that during the bid, the more you manage that cost.
Do you foresee any difficulty in sticking to that schedule, or see the opportunity to try to do?
Yeah, so actually, like, I'll start with saying that, no, we do not foresee any difficulties. Actually, we do believe that there may be some even areas that can be optimized. That's what we were hinting at, you know, from the procurement standpoint. I also believe that part of the construction would be bringing some of the people you saw on the previous slide, which would be Mike Clark, and also our planners and schedulers. And then we could also look for certain phases that are very critical to use, like the lean approach. Quite a few of us are lean certified, you know, like smaller batch, and looking at how to really optimize each area. And this is something we do all the time. And this is like, it's more like, in order to truly define how to optimize, we need to understand better what matters to you. Because when we see the drawing, we know how to build it. We definitely think it's very cool. But once we really hear, you know, like looking at the ceiling, like moving a couple of ceiling tiles, you know, there is a lot of things that are opportunities. So it's finding those opportunities to actually satisfy your needs better.
Because you were the builder construction, what have you seen in terms of the impact on both budget and schedule? Supply chain issues, availability of materials, construction inflation, so what have you seen recently with some of your projects, and what do you, when you look at the future with 18 months, what do you see as potential issues there?
I'm gonna let John talk about this. I will talk
Okay.
thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so as far as cost impacts, we're kind of, so like we said earlier, this is the public group's $100 million group, but $500 million company. We're tracking costs daily within the estimated departments. So we're tracking everything from the generators, switch gears, all the way down to flooring and whatnot. And it's a lot of the tracking's on job bidding right now, so we're getting current feedback. We're also calling up vendors and some contractors, just getting kind of daily updates. That kind of ties into the material procurement as well. Everything, stuff's starting to flatten out a little bit of some stuff's pushing out, but now I think with Ukraine and Russia, that might change a little bit, but we're also staying on top of the design, so we're working with a lot of clients who are actually changing things in design to meet schedule, We changed a system that was all bar joists. Couldn't get the bar joists in time. We ended up redesigning it to one flange beams. Ended up coming in right on budget still, but now we get the material faster. So we're looking at any avenues like that. I think the key thing is just staying on top of it, making sure everyone's aware of it. So we'll update something weekly or bi-weekly to the team saying, these are things you want to look at. Keep an eye on these for the next month or so. But pricing, every, I'd say month, we're getting a new thing from a vendor saying, aluminum's going up, the neighbor wants 15%, or steel's actually leveled off, but all the petroleum products now are going up, so roofing, plastic, stuff like that. We're getting all that, and the one thing we can do is just communicate back to you folks to let everyone know where it is.
Yeah, I think that, sorry, to close that out. So, I mean, the biggest thing we saw is through, right, 2021 was all the budget, running at 13 to 16% escalation. We're seeing 4 to 6 this year is what we're seeing at a comfortable level. So it's down, it's good, we really watching that much better than what we're telling our clients, right, for 2021. From a financial standpoint, the other thing is manpower right now. This is a booming economy right now with a booming construction business. So manpower is an issue. So one of the biggest things we do when we talk about schedule, a lot of people say, yeah, schedule, you got to meet the end date. Like, it's not that simple, right? We need that detailed planning to be able to work with us. So what we're seeing is even just a little bit of slide. Things are, right, so you schedule that roofer to come out here on a certain date, and then that individual slides for 2 weeks, they don't have a calendar. So really making sure that we're driving all and working with our to make sure that they understand we need to make a change. Why? And they've got full buy-in to that and do it. If not, we're going to look at it. You know, we're reacting. A lot of what we're doing now, we're needing to unfortunately build in some contingency into our schedules, which we try not to. I think the faster we can clear the path, it's the best way to the end. But we have to be able to react to what's happening right now. We get phone calls last minute saying something's delayed, push. We can't sit and wait. We've got to be able to react and move and adjust, right? We just sit here, we're never going to get it done. So we need to be able to pivot, dive into that schedule, understand how we can rework things, make sure we get our partners on the table with us to make sure they can meet that. But, you know, manpower, material change, and, you know, we've got a great vision into that budget. So I feel good that working with you will be in a good place. From there, we really just got to manage that material procurement and manpower.
The only, one of the things too, we're starting to do is now, we're trying to kind of build in some, in public job and private job, build in some alternates and stuff like that, and we can take to the public, you don't want to have alternates all the way through, but take to kind of the last phase where we're ready to kind of pull the trigger to procure the job, but you want to know there's some options. If roofing spikes 30%, there may be an alternate to the system. We want to make sure we're keeping all those on top of all those things.
And one of the things that, you know, Jonathan, we've got detailed MEP estimators that work with his department. And although by the time you get to the end, they're follows up in, right, you don't need them during that final portion. There, I've got them built into what we presented to you folks to be able to help with that time, look at it, make sure that it's where we need to be, it's the right choice. So we're giving you that upfront detail. Although it's filed up in, it'd be easy just to say, right, during pre-con, I say, some my competitors might do this where it's not my problem. It is actually we owe you a date, a budget, and we want you to be give us great reviews, right? So that's what this business is built on. Our work.
Great, thank you.
I asked you to expand a little bit on this contract process philosophy, the relationship filed submitters, and how do you address contract?
I'll talk just to get bids initially, to get interest in the job. We reach out to all our subs that are either file sub trades or non-file sub trades to make sure we're drawing up interest for the job and through the pre-qual process and stuff like that to make sure we get that coverage.
So I think in general, like, I think our approach both internally and externally, either with the client or also with our sub is very much of a teamwork approach. You know, we understand that nothing is ever perfect. You know, like people can make mistakes and it happens, and it's how you hold people accountable. And for us, I think everything is based on accountability and talking about problems when they arise, and instead of waiting for them to go downhill and get worse. It's like more like, what is the situation and how do we fix it? So I think this is really our general how we say, hey, this is what's happening. Let's really analyze what it is and how do we fix this. And this applies to any subcontractor. So it goes both ways. It's not just for filed submits and non-filed, because some people would think that for filed bidders, it's harder. I mean, my personal experience of a project has been that sometimes, like people think, oh, you got that filed bidder, and you are not lucky. You know what? Every time I've had very great luck. Even though at first some can be a little quirky. I mean, I'm sure Chip will smile like I'm thinking of a special roofer, but I mean, at first people are like, oh, no, not him again. I mean, that's not how I think personally. And I'm like, by the end, we always end up best friends. At least it's people actually, because it's relationship. It's people that, if you were to call and say the police chief, in Dedham, and said you'd be raving about us, you would not just say, yeah, they are nice. No, it's actually people that will go out of their way. And this is the same for subcontractors. They know that we just want to be fair. And being fair is not always easy, but being fair is the right thing to do. So we will be fair to our client and we'll be fair to our subcontractors. So we will defend their interest to explain the right way, and we'll also defend the client's interest. And if we are always fair and try to do always what's right, there is never going to be a problem. And then they thank us for it. And if they have, like, say, especially these days with manpower issues, they will come to our job first. And, we don't have any manpower issues, like say even Dedham, like some for that or other projects, they will come to our job because, they know we're treating them well.
Spend time on.
Spending time.
Talking to PMs, talking to, I mean, it's not easy to do, but I mean, people are just people, I mean, if you just look at it like, oh, well, they're my electrician. They're not your electrician. It's a father, somebody's brother. He's got a wife. If he's having a bad day, you're having a bad day. How do you get through to those people? So at the contract level, that's one side of things too. But just on the boots on the ground level, like, we got to take this as people. We got to figure out what makes them tick. Just like you can't project a bad day and expect everybody to smile back at you. So it's a lot of relationship building.
Yeah.
People you've never met before. Every time it's a new group of people.
That's right, and it's getting to know them, and I think George is really good at that as well. And it's more like, once you find out what really matters to them, then you actually sometimes, I've had some that know how to do pay application, and we go do things that we should never be doing, but if that's what matters to them, then they'll come for stuff that really matters to us. So that's what it is. We need to understand what matters to people.
Yeah, I think we address a lot of that head on. Valves upgrades and non-valves upgrades cost the same, right? So it's all our subcontractor. It's going to get done. So not only part of just our best practice in being able to how we look at things, but it's also part of our QHC program. We do a kickoff meeting with every subcontractor. They're at the table. We talked about building our schedule, getting their input, getting manpower counts in different areas. They're on. So what Natalie says, they come to us first, is because people, they're the business making money, right? So they go to where they know people are doing not only the right thing, but are running a well-planned project, because that's where they're going to be most efficient and they'll make the most money, get on to the next one.
So for sitting there. Listen.
If not, then or then.
Sorry, do we-
We got it.
No, so on lesson learned is, I think sometimes, even though we always prepare ourselves for, all the alternatives, sometimes there are things that people don't realize. And I think identifying the existing condition is something we strongly believe in. However, there are some power lines right adjacent to the foundation, and even though we did some surveying, extensive surveying, to try to line things up, and we did carry the appropriate solution for the rig because we had some geopiers with a rig very close to the line. In hindsight, should we have looked at it a little more at the beginning in the construction, identifying this as a higher risk and then redesigning the foundation early on instead of getting closer to that date and put a little bit of a strain on the project? So at the end, we're able to work with the design team and accommodate this. It was a bit of a strain. They were able to redesign this foundation to actually work properly, and we were also able to still complete it on time without a demobilization from the subcontractor. So it actually worked out, but I think that it was not necessary. I mean, so that's part of our job to kind of like minimize anything, but sometimes there are things you miss. It is the way it is. I mean, I don't know if you agree with this.
My question on the line of communication, I think, well. Yeah, perfect. I think we have just about 10 minutes left, given we've got a little bit late. So, it's the final question is actually a good question for us. But during or anything we want to go back on, go over again, the time, remaining time.
Yeah, so I'll get into this here. The only question I have, and you can answer Howard at the end, is what is your timeline for selecting a CF partner?
We hope that we will have a proper team.
Really the only question I think we had, a lot of questions on the table to make sure we're doing right by the city of Glasgow, but let's get there, right? So just to recap, and I apologize if any of this is a little bit repetitive based on the questions. But as we mentioned, we were founded in 2002, right? We're 20 years old, veteran-owned business, $500,000 company. Some of the in-house support that we touched on, this is where it might get a little repetitive. Self-perform capabilities. So you can see down in the bottom left here, we've got a sister company, Child Services, which currently is running 83,075 laborers. So we run it doing 150 to 170 carpenters and laborers. The good part about this is we're not dependent fully on that submarket, right? So there may be scope, particularly in a building like this where it's renovated, we need, and people just haven't, we're too busy, we can't deal with it right now. So we'll take a lot of that on in-house to make sure that we're not having to worry about submarket. And it gives us the ability to work with those non-filed subtrade bidders on the contract labor side to make sure that if they need supplemental manpower, we've got that, right? So from that standpoint, we feel confident that we've got it surrounded well. This is really a big asset for us. As I mentioned earlier, the engineering and technical services division, we talked about kind of the 3D scanning that we've got the capabilities of doing. As we mentioned, they'll take us all the way through MEP coordination through final commissioning. This is a great group of individual people. As we mentioned previously, the lead question, we have an in-house sustainability department that can help with us, permitting and compliance and scheduling planning, which I think we beat to death. But it just, as I mentioned, these are two individuals, these are a department that reports out. These are individuals that be dedicated through all of these services to this team once they're here. So we're one of 6 divisions within the company that have these resources at our fingertips, which we really think differentiate ourselves from our competitors, because some of the small companies don't have these resources at their fingertips. Some of the community outreach, just to kind of touch base on some of the charity stuff. We work with Wentworth, their ROTC program, the Home for the Wounded Warriors, the New England Center for Homeless Vets. Really proud of them, stuff we do in the community. Building pathways is something we do. It's pretty fantastic. It helps us with that diversity, particularly the public side. Really helps us build within the construction community, really making sure that we get the tradespeople through the system and make sure we get a more diversity. A lot of state work, I'm not sure what the diversity requirements are here. It really helps us build within to be able to really build the trades for diversity. And the last thing is the Heron. So for Sarah, opioid crisis, so we're really proud of the person his team. So just really wanted to touch base on some of the high level stuff we do with the company. There's a lot more, but I can point out just a few here. So just to kind of close out, we got a really hand-selected team for you. I hope that came through. They're ready to go to work for you. Really work hard, as they always do. One of the things that we have here, these are our promises to you, right? Is to eliminate the surprises, elevate the experience, and execute excellence. We know we're delivering top-notch service. And that this is truly what separates us from everybody else. So this is our promise to you. This is what we'll do for you. This is what we'll do for the Gloucester community. And with that, we'd love to be a partner, to see a partner. We'd love the opportunity.
Great, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.